various and different presentations. First was Amanda's, which was kind of talking a little bit deeper into the nuances around consent. So she looked at people within the BDSM community to try to kind of unpack some of the emotions and the differences between different types of consent, because it's not always just as easy as saying yes and no, and trying to kind of push for more discussion around how to talk about consent, how to teach consent, and kind of how to because sometimes you can consent at the beginning and not at the end, or it can change in the middle, and sometimes you have different experiences, and how do you mitigate those with each other, but then also hold accountability for the people within the communities, within your social circles, and larger. So it's a very interesting and explorative idea around that. And we had a presentation from Eloise about sex work for students at the UBA, though I think sex work might be a little bit questionable, because we found in the study that a lot of the students themselves didn't associate themselves with the term sex worker. But yet they're still, partaking in escort services or girlfriend experiences and other things that maybe as researchers we would name that as kind of, exploring this idea of not necessarily like sex workers who are working on the street, but more privileged, student. There was like a higher class, I think somebody used, in terms of sex work, and it was a part of a larger study that was looking in Amsterdam, but then hopefully in the Netherlands, and then comparing it to research that was already done in the UK. So I think there's also some interesting conclusions to be as that research kind of wraps up and finalizes. And then finally from Adelia, we talked about actually also infertility in Kenya. Which was also echoed, seems a lot of the same conclusions that you just shared, in terms of there's not necessarily enough research, there's not enough people or organizations who are talking about the issue, it's not being negotiated, especially not with women, but especially not then with also men, and bringing the men involved, but also kind of those elements of care. What was also really interesting was that you can't necessarily group everyone who's infertile together either, because that's just a reality, but that's not necessarily a grouping, and that a lot of the women that were spoken to have very different understandings of their own conditions, and also what that meant for their families, their relationships with others, and trying to kind of, again, dive in a little bit deeper into those nuances. And I think that was really one of the biggest themes of ours, was taking concepts that we all understand as kind of sexual health workers, practitioners, activists, what have you, but then really taking it to the next level to kind of really play with those subjects and to try to dive a little bit deeper.